This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with vocalist Jarvis Leatherby of the heavy metal act Night Demon. If I knew absolutely nothing about Night Demon, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Heavy metal. I don't know. I guess inspired by a lot of things metal. It's kind of I hate to use the word modern because it's way more of a classic sound, but it's not a copy of the classic sound. It's modernized, but not in a way, not a modern metal, you know? Yeah, it's tough. I don't know. We span a lot of, we cross a lot of boundaries there with the music, you know? So I kind of leave it up to the listener to decide, but I guess a lot of people have classed us into the scene of the new wave of traditional heavy metal, which I'm totally cool with, you know? And we've been flying that flag for 10 years now.
Absolutely. And you're going to be flying it again on March 17th with your third studio album, Outsider, through Century Media Records. Little distance between your last two studio albums. Besides the pandemic, was there something else holding that up?
See, if you look at it on paper like that, which, you know, a lot of people do, it looks like a big gap, but we were actually busier than ever in that time. When our album Darkness Remains came out in 2017, we did 3 world tours on that album. We put out a triple live LP in 2018. We released 5 7-inch singles in 2020 and started a podcast that is now 135 consecutive weeks running. So, and picked up again in 2022 and did over 100 gigs. So, the singles in 2020 came out last year on a 12-inch compilation. We never got to tour on this song, so we thought, let's do that. Let's do that last year. This album was already finished. It was already in the can, but, you know, we're a quality over quantity kind of band, and it's like, let's go out and tour the songs that we released during the pandemic and give that some life and then move on to something else, you know? And as long as people were waiting for another studio album, you know, the time is here. You know, it's kind of like when somebody owes you money, you want them to pay you back. Like if they lag on it, whenever they do pay you back, like you're always going to need it, you know? So it's like, you know, when it does arrive, which things do, you know, time is the one unrenewable resource that we have on this mortal plane, and time does come, and the time is now.
Outsider is a bit of a concept album. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the concept is?
Yeah, it's a concept album actually through and through from start to finish. We wrote the music. I wrote a film script and we adapted the music to it. And it's really one long piece of music that's split up into 8 chapters. We recorded the album live. It's designed to be played from start to finish with no silence and no breaks at all. The concept story is basically about this guy who's he works in like the family graveyard, and he grows up in this small town that's surrounded by this kind of supernatural green mist, almost like the Northern Lights kind of. And anybody who's ever left this town is never to be seen or heard from again. And no outsiders have come in. One day, our main character, Johnny, decides he's going to take off and see what's out there in the great big world. And he mistakenly ends up back in the same place. He's a bit confused, but a bit relieved because he went on a long journey. But much to his dismay, he discovers that everybody in this town that he knew is very different than the people he knew. He's in some kind of alternate reality where the same people are there, but have grown up in completely different circumstances and are totally different. He ends up running into an alternate version of himself, or a shadow version, if you will. Nobody else witnesses this, but the other version of himself is not the nicest person, and a fight ensues, and our main character Johnny has to kill his shadow self in self-defense and then assume his identity and live in this world, all the while trying to get back to his own reality.
That pretty much is dead on to how I kind of thought the story went listening to it. You kind of move through the motions pretty much like that. I'm like, I could sort of pick up the story here, but now that you hit the certain plot points, I'm like, that makes a little more sense now.
I think there's 2 different mediums when you're talking about story writing and songwriting. And what we did is we wanted to make sure that the lyrics were more metaphorical, where it's for the casual listener. You can listen to the songs and go, okay, I kind of think it's about that, or I can relate to that in some way. The storyline is just for the fan, the hardcore fan. I'm not a fan of concept records that kind of walk you through everything, because it's just not good songwriting. Then he did this, now he did that. And if you come in somewhere in the middle, you're kind of lost. So what we did is we've created an audio narration of the synopsis, which we're going to run on our podcast in 2 weeks. It'll probably come out on some form of vinyl next year. We've also put that same stuff into text in the liner notes of all the physical versions of the album, along with the lyrics, so that, people aren't speculating, well, what's this about? If they really want to know, it's in there. I can't tell you how many years I went on online forums, like trying to figure out what Operation Mindcrime was about, people arguing about stuff, no, it's this. And then the band's like, well, it's up to your interpretation. It's like, we don't want to play that game.
Is it difficult picking songs as singles when you're trying to tell a full story on an album?
Yeah, I kind of left that up to the label, which I rarely do, but I was just like, whatever songs you guys think are the strongest, just go for it. And for as far as delivering music videos, we're just doing performance videos for them, because if we did a narrative with a storyline, it wouldn't make any sense. You'd be in and out of it, so. But like I said, it's written as a screenplay first, and it's got a very cinematic view to the whole thing. And, that's how I see it as a film,
You said that you recorded the album live. Did you pick a particular setting to set the atmosphere that you wanted? Like some bands record in a castle to get a certain effect, or they record in a haunted house or something like that. Did you do anything like that?
Man, that would be super cool, but no, it's not that sexy. It was the pandemic, but we have a great studio, our own studio. It's a commercial studio too, and there's a lot of work that happens there when we're out on the road. But no, we recorded it there and did it ourselves with nobody, no outsiders, no pun intended, not even an assistant engineer. We just did it, and it was just way more relaxed. But one thing that I'll say about Night Demon is, like, with our album covers and a lot of our artwork, we kind of take the H.P. Lovecraft approach, which I'm sure you'll appreciate being in New England. But, a lot of the stories that we have are based on actual locations, and then we create like a kind of fictitious story behind it. And it's the same thing with this album. It was my girlfriend took me to this abandoned church with a graveyard overlooking the sea in Ireland, with this abandoned, like this desolate road coming up to it. And we would visit it a lot. And I kind of just sat there one day and I thought, man, what would happen if somebody lived here? What if, like, it kind of all starts from there. But it's really cool because a lot of the things that we do like this, our fans can actually go to these places and go, wow, okay, I got the whole picture, right?
You do have quite the attractive presentation for the album. You have the different vinyls, the different colored vinyls, the variants. I noticed that you also have single artwork when it comes to the digital part of things. You sort of have the theme running through that too. So is it important for you as a band that the presentation is almost as good as the music?
I would agree with that. I think that it's equally as important as the music. At least, anybody can disagree with me, and that's fine. To each his own on that. But I would say the attention that we put into the presentation, we put into it just as much as we do with the actual content of the music. So, dude, it's heavy metal. It's like you have to take people there visually. There's so many great albums from back in the day that have the worst artwork that, if they would have had a chance at some great art, it would have been fantastic. Or there's albums, you got Molly Hatchet albums with Frank Frazetta art that's incredible, and then back in the day you go buy that record and you're like, what the hell is this? No offense to Molly Hatchet, but like, it's just, Southern rock is not what that album cover displays, and it's no Skynyrd, so.
Were you able to pick your artist, or was it someone the label suggested?
Oh no, we always choose our own stuff. The label doesn't really doesn't really mess with us, which is nice. They've always trusted us. They never asked to hear any demos or anything. We just hand in a finished product. But we've used the same artist for all of our albums, so we have that cohesiveness.
Okay, who's the artist and how'd you discover him?
His name is Don Fury, and I've known him for a long time, since we were kids. And then he was doing art for kids, and then he got a job working for Warner Brothers, for Warner Records, at he was like the head of the art department. He was an art director there and doing like big time records. And but we've always stayed friends, and he still does stuff for us whenever we want. So it's been like really cool to see us both kind of go on to bigger and better things, you know.
You mentioned that Outsiders sort of started off as a movie treatment. Have you considered maybe doing a long form video surrounding the album?
I'd like to do a film. I've talked to a couple film directors that I really admire. It's, it's like I'm a big fan of, I know a lot about filmmaking, but I've never made one, you know. I've written like 3 or 4 scripts. A low budget film these days is like still $250,000, you know. I mean, obviously there's some people shoot on their phones, or like you see every now and again there's a rogue movie that's shot for like 20 grand where everybody's friends chip in, and like, but it's a very simplistic concept when it comes to that stuff, you know. And this has a little bit more in the elements, you know, that would require some of that attention for it to be good. So it's something that I'm kind of keeping in the back of my head, and I'm not going to let go yet. But it's not really my medium. So the fact that it exists and it's there, and I actually finished it, because I mean, look, there are some days where, you know, I just spent 8 hours looking at a blank page and like hating my life, you know. So I really learned a lot, you know, and I'm really just proud that it's done. If it gets adapted into something later like that, I'd be really happy. But we'll see what happens.
You're going to be taking this show out on the road. It's going to be your first full U.S. tour in 5 years. You're going out on the Hell's Decibels tour with Satan and Haunt, so you must be pretty pumped about this U.S. jaunt.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to get back out there. I mean, we've played a bunch of gigs, I mean, since that last full U.S. tour, but usually one-offs and regional stuff, you know, and we've done a ton overseas and in all other continents, or most of them. Yeah, I mean, it's just good to be back out there. I'm just excited to see a lot of people, and I think that this is a good package, and the fans are going to really get their money's worth, which I always appreciate. You know, we've been on some tours before with some bigger acts that had very high ticket prices, and I just kind of feel like some of those shows, as big as and professional as they were, like didn't really deliver as far as, you know, fan expectations for that kind of money, you know. So we're here to make up for that, you know.
Have you ever played with Satan or Hunt, but in the past?
Oh yeah, both of them. Yeah, we're all good buddies. I think 19's at a point now where we kind of just, if we're gonna tour with other bands, we kind of just want to tour with people that we like and that we know, you know. I mean, obviously, look, if we have a good opportunity to get some exposure by touring with a bigger act, you know, we'll have to see. There are some offers right now that I'm just, I don't know, asking, just we're doing the gut check, you know. Hey, does this make sense? Kind of thing, you know. No, I just, there's so much more beyond the concert that you play every night. There's 23 other hours of the day, and the people that you surround yourselves with is so important, you know. So we've learned that by playing 800 shows in the last decade, you know. So
you have a record release party coming up on March 16th in Ventura, California. You're planning to play the entire album?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's under 35 minutes, so it's no problem. We can still play 10 classics in there. Our songs are pretty short, so yeah.
Raven, the UK heavy metal act, recently was inducted into the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame, and you credit them with giving Night Demon a career-changing break in 2014. Was it just that they had taken you on tour, or was there more to that?
I mean, that's pretty much it, but that's huge, you know, because at the time we were like just literally, at some days we were literally starving. I mean, we quit our jobs to go for it with the band, and it was really hard to get going. And we were doing some tours in Europe where we'd have like 7 gigs over like a 6-week span, and like trying to just navigate things and figure it out. And we played a few gigs with them really early on in our career, with them and Diamond Head, and kind of struck up a little bit of a friendship. But one earlier that summer of that year, we got stuck we played a festival with them in Spain, and both bands, we were talking backstage, and all the vans that had like were supposed to take the bands to the hotel had left and were not coming back. And so we were kind of just stuck at this venue together. And that's kind of when we came up with the idea to do that tour. And it was incredible. It was over 50 shows, in the US, and we didn't have any booking agents or anything, either band. And we kind of just pulled together with everything that we knew and everybody that we knew, and really just made something happen. So it was really good. And it kind of put us in the right position to go for it. And I remember we started the tour on the East Coast, and we had like $500 to our name, and we're like, what are we doing? But we already bought merchandise and all that. And so we said we had enough gas money to get out there, and we kind of just lived show by show and made it in the black somehow, and that kind of gave us the big push of like, you just got to take the leap of faith without a net. And if you're hungry, you'll play hard, you'll win the audience over because you have no other choice, So yeah, it was great.
I think that'll make a great album title. If you're hungry, you'll play hard. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier your podcast. It's the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. There's no amount of questions that I could ask you about Outsider that you don't really delve and get deep into in your podcast. You get really deep into this album. So if there's any fans out there that really want to know the scoop on this, rather than us summing it up in 30 minutes, they should go to your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, a lot of work goes into it. We have a pretty good team though that works on it. And, it's kind of more of a journalistic approach. There's a lot of good stuff in there. It's not just 3 guys sitting around and shooting the shit. Like I think we've only done 2 live episodes like that, and the whole time we've done it. So it's very in depth. It's meant for the hardcore fan, and for anybody who's just a casual fan, it's a really good look inside of what a real heavy metal band in 2023 does. I mean, it's a good look inside to how the underground works and what it takes to make something like this happen constantly. I've learned that, like, after doing all these episodes, it's kind of like, wow, it's like our story's there, but it's all the other little valuable lessons that you pick up along the way.
Now, I noticed you had some single releases, and then you turned it into a compilation. You played with ULI Jon Roth of early Scorpions. How did that opportunity come about?
Well, we were headlining a festival in Hamburg, Germany, and it was our first kind of bigger festival headline slot. And so we thought, well, we should do something special for the German fans, because they've just like really stood by us, especially in the early days. I mean, I often say without them, I don't know if we would even have a career today. So Uli was living in the UK. We hit him up to come out and play a couple songs with us, and he was reluctant for a little while, but we kept on him, and he finally agreed to do it. And so we flew him in, and he kind of came through the back door right before we went on. So we didn't get to rehearse with him. But it was great, man. It went off good. And he came out during the encore, and people they just kind of like, what is happening right now? Like, nobody knew he was even in the building, So I don't think people really expected something like that. And it went off great. And I'm glad we were able to capture that and then release it.
you're a horror movie fan, and I assume that your love of horror movies kind of influenced this album. Do you go out and get to the horror conventions and kind of get to know the people behind the movies, the actors or the writers or whichever?
You know, I'm not big on horror cons, but in recent times, I've toyed with the idea of having like a Night Demon booth there, at these things. I think that might be cool. Especially, we have a big one out here called Monster Palooza. That's really incredible. I go a lot to paranormal conventions. I'm into that kind of stuff, and a lot of metaphysical stuff, and high strangeness, and my girlfriend's way into it too. So I find myself going more to those things. But I mean, look, I watch horror movies I watched a new one last night, so like it's all good. I still love the entertainment and all that of it. But as far as like, I used to be a big collector, and I'm not so much anymore. So the horror convention for me, I'd rather go to like a film festival or something like that. The horror cons are great if you like want to pick up a bunch of great merch, and yeah, you want autographs and stuff like that. But there's a couple guys that we've been buddies with, or that like the band, like Bill Mosley, and he does a lot of those horror cons and stuff. But yeah, look, I'm not opposed to it. It's just kind of like we're always on the road. It's really hard to get to some of these things. I have to like really pick and choose. I'd love to play one, actually.
That seems like it'd be the perfect gig for you.
Absolutely.
Ice Nine Kills, they started their own horror con over here in New England. I think they did. I think it was the first one or the second one this year.
Really?
And
I did not know that. I know I'm having lunch with their manager on Wednesday, so I'm going to bring that up and see if we can get on that. So
it's called the Silver Scream Con. They build it around a big concert that they have, and then over the weekend at a hotel nearby, they're the main signing thing, and then they have all the celebrity stars, like the guy from Hellraiser and a bunch of other people. It was actually pretty cool, and it was definitely worth the ticket price.
All right, I'm writing this down right now.
All right, Jarvis, those are all the questions I have for you tonight. The new album Outsider is out March 17th through Century Media Records. Fantastic album, and I wish you the best of luck with that and the upcoming tour.
Thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it, man.